Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Sam Williams, and we sat down with Matt McClean, who is the recent winner of the US Mid-Am. Among many things, the things the Mid-Am gets you is an invitation to the Masters in 2023 and the US Open at LACC in 2023. So Matt played in an All-Ireland final coming down the stretch at the US Mid-Am over there at Erin Hills, and we managed to catch up with Matt and have a chat through the tournament, the final itself, his amateur golf, and his ambitions with his career going forward and what he's going to do in the next few years. So we had a really interesting chat with Matt, and I hope you enjoy.
Watch this. No way!
Yeah, well, I mean, anyway, look, I mean, just sort of kicking it off with a massive congratulations. I think not just US Mid-Amateur Champion, but does that make you the fourth Irishman in history to win a USGA title? Is that right?
I think so. As far as I'm aware, I'm not overly good with the sort of history of tournaments and all that sort of those stats side of things. But I think Rory, Mcilroy, and Graeme McDowell, 2 US Opens, and then Harrington just earlier this year with the US Seniors. Or so the four USGA events, that an Irish player's won, and then I think it's the first USGA amateur event that an Irish player's won, if I'm correct. So, yeah, it was pretty good. I think it was actually the first USGA final even that Irish man has got to in the amateur. Yeah, and we both got there this year. So yeah, it was all sort of pretty nice. I think there's been a huge amount of success in America over the years from Irish players.
But it feels like there's obviously this big, not just yourself, you've had a great season as well, but Hugh Foley's had a brilliant season as well, hasn't he, on the amateur scene? You know, going into the final, knowing that it's going to be an Irishman that wins at Erin Hills, you know, that must have been pretty special because you guys were traveling, rooming, eating, practicing, doing everything together, right, for the whole lead up to that final.
Yeah, as I said, we sort of just decided between ourselves initially to sort of think, you know, Erin Hills, the pretty famous golf course. I don't think I'd really heard of the event probably this time last year. And one of the guys sort of brought it up and we sort of thought, you know, it's probably as good as chance as any tournament to get the sort of, you know, the prize at the end of it. So we just sort of took it upon ourselves to go on ahead and go for it. And yeah, as I said, we travelled, we flew over together, Sunday the 4th, and then we were staying in Chicago for a few days playing golf before, stayed in the same Airbnb, shared a car. So yeah, pretty much 2 weeks we were over there. We were pretty much everything we did was together for the full 2 weeks. So it was pretty odd, sort of making it to the final, obviously, and having to play against each other. But the only sort of bonus was that we sort of knew at least one of us was going to win at that stage. So
when did you start to talk to him about how the final could be on the cards? Because obviously you're opposite sides of the draw when the draw came out. Were you immediately thinking, this will be a laugh when we'll both get to the final? Or when was it first mentioned, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was mentioned before we even started playing as a joke, like sort of 100% a joke at the start. Even before the tournament started, we sort of said, we'll both qualify, other sides of the draw, meet in the final. That would be ideal. But that was obviously a joke at the start. The point where it probably only really becoming a proper, scenario that it could happen was probably last 16 is when I sort of thought that it was an option, because we were sort of getting through our matches relatively okay. We were sort of, decent winning margins. And then the last 16 is when we were obviously the matches were a bit more condensed. So he was only maybe 2 holes ahead of me. So you could see him play and he could see me playing. He was waiting up by the green after he'd finished his match, and then I just finished my match. So yeah, it was probably that stage when we sort of thought there's probably a good chance now that we can actually meet.
Who was the first to say it out loud?
I can't remember. I think we probably looked at each other and both sort of said, keep it going. We'll see you. See you in the final, sort of thing. But yeah, as I said, even with those sort of, that sort of tournament or that format of the tournament, you're out so quickly. a stretch of 3 or 4 bad holes. And you're right, so it can turn very quickly to the same extent. So we didn't want to sort of, look too much into it.
Don't want to jinx it.
Yeah. A couple guys said this. We were like, oh well, good chance there's going to be an All-Ireland final here. And we were like, don't really want to look at that just yet.
But it's weird, isn't it? 18 holes match play, anyone can kind of come in there, can't they? I think Bobby Jones was even quoted as saying the hardest event to win is an amateur championship because anyone can get hot with a putter for 18 holes. So I don't know, what's the secret, Matt? What's the secret to kind of seeing out these endurance match play events and getting through? Is it just being clinical with a putter or just being really kind of gritty and not giving holes away? Because your luck can, I sense, change quite quickly where someone could just get on a heater for 9 holes with a putter and before you know it, the tournament's over.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the big thing with obviously professional golf or even amateur stroke play golf is that you have 72 holes. So it's, it's up to yourself to win it or lose it. Whoever has the lowest score is going to win. The tough thing with match play is that, as you said, if you come up against someone who not even just has a good day with the putter, but just plays well, anyone's capable of shooting 5 or 6 under on the day, and anyone's capable of shooting level par. So, it's you need a bit of luck, I think, along the way. But there probably is that match play tactic or instinct to sort of be able to win that hole when maybe you shouldn't have won it. And there's that sort of, that up and down that you shouldn't have done, just sort of, puts a bit of a sort of a dagger in the chest of your opponent to sort of dishearten them a bit. So there's definitely a match play ability that some people have better than others, but it's just really consistency as much as possible. And again, you just need luck along the way. I've had plenty of tournaments where I've played perfectly well all the way through, and you get to any stage and someone shoots 5 under.
And then
you're home. So
so do you feel like you're playing the guy, or do you feel like you're playing the course? That makes sense. When you stand there and it's whether it's like, I don't know, semi-finals, quarterfinals, whatever, you stood there, you've got 18 holes. Are you thinking, well, actually, these are the holes I'm going to attack. These are the pins that I think I'm going to go after. These I'm going to play safe, and I'm just going to play my own game? Or are you feeling like you're playing the guy?
It's definitely a bit of both, because you can't just play the course. Because if you play the course, you might have a tactic to play a certain hole, and if and it's a par hole, just say, or you're going to hit a 30 foot away from the pin. But if your opponent hits it to 2 foot, then there's no point to hitting a 30 foot because you're only going to hold that 1 in 100 maybe. So there's definitely a bit of both, and that's where the balance comes in as to when to attack, when not to attack. But I think a lot of the times with match play, if you play the opponent, the big thing, I think you can play the opponent when you're trying to play attacking. It helps.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you play the opponent when you're playing defensive, then you can sort of make a bit of an idiot yourself at times.
Yeah, like if they miss the green and you go for the heart of the green, they chip in. You're like, oh my goodness, what on earth has just happened? Yeah.
Or the big ones, off the tee. Just say someone hits it into the water, up the right, and then you play defensively, hit it up the left, miss the green, make bogey. He's probably still going to make bogey if he hits it in the water off the tee. Yeah, take one drop, hit it on the green. So there's things like that where you just have to play your own ball. I think when it's one side, when it's there in trouble, you've got to still be aggressive and not play too far back, because as you said, anyone can, chip in or make a birdie or sort of make a really tough par at any point as well. Yeah. So
you've got to keep the pressure going, I sense, haven't you? That's the thing. And obviously, particularly at an elite amateur level, but, even the club golfer can identify to that. I think even in, playing knockout matches, like you say, someone goes in the water, you start playing with the steering wheel, and before you know it, you've walked off with a scrapey half, or you've lost the hole. The other thing with the event, because I think you play a 2-round medal, right? That then gets you through the qualifying stages. And then I think you played 6 rounds of knockout golf plus practice round. So it's like a massive endurance anyway. But the event finished later as well, didn't it, Matt? So am I right in thinking there was some weather that came in the middle of the week, which meant your final with Hugh was played over like a staggered 2 days, like an afternoon and a morning? Is that right?
Yeah, so as I said, normally any of these events are tough. This is the first, I think it's the first match play final of these events that I've gotten to. Actually, I've got to sort of semis quite a few times in quarters, but it's the first full sort of endurance event I've had to do. So the way it worked out, the Saturday went sort of the plan. Sunday was completely called off due to rain. So we didn't, no one played at all on Sunday.
And that was the second round of the medal, right?
That was the second round of the medal on the Sunday, yeah. And it was funny actually because I was actually 5 over 3-6 on the first round as well.
Wow.
No way.
Round the, if you like, easier course. Most of these tournaments are set up on one sort of slightly more scoreable course and one harder course. So the harder course being Erin Hills, the scoreable, if you like, course being the Blue Mountain course. So I was 5 over 3-6. Sort of thinking, this is
that's a shot gone. But those are 6 holes you wanted to make it happen, right?
Yeah, so there were 6. They weren't overly hard holes either, to be fair. And so I got it back. I finished 2 over for the round, but I was actually sitting in 72nd after the first round.
Wow.
So the rain came in on the Sunday, completely called it off. So in my head, I was thinking this could be a 1-round cut as well. I've seen that happen before. So thought that, well, that's, you played 1 round and you're out, missed the cut. So then the Monday morning, it was raining again on Monday morning. So it was delayed by the guts of 5 hours on Monday morning. So again, I was just thinking this is, there's no chance this is going ahead now. And then I think I was meant to tee off at 12 o'clock on the Sunday, or push forward to the Monday, push back to 5 o'clock. So sunset was about 7 o'clock, quarter to 7. So played 8 holes, played those in 3 under, I think, which was good. Called in, set the alarm for 5 o'clock the next morning, teed off at 7 the next morning, finished the round, shot 5 under the second round.
5 under, yeah, that's incredible.
Which was sort of, that was a big round, really. I somewhat was comfortable in the cut after the first 8 holes.
Yeah.
But you could still obviously, make a mess of it. So, but then so they made the cut. They needed 2 or 3 hours to sort of make the cut. There was a 17-man playoff for 12 places. So that took 2 hours. Wow. I think I teed off at 6 o'clock, 10 past 6, then for my first match that evening. Played 4 holes.
This is really odd. This is mental.
Called back out the next morning at 7 a.m. again to finish off that match. And then from then on, I think it went as normal, if you like, apart from the last day, as you said, whereas the final was on the 18th on the Friday afternoon, and then went to bed, got back up the next morning and finished off the final then on the Saturday morning. So,
so you have that bad start, 5 over through 6. Like you say, I imagine you're pretty demoralised at that point and the rain comes in. What do you do on Sunday to keep yourself motivated, to try and, convince yourself that things can change? What did you do?
I don't think we did anything really, to be honest. There's not much. I think we went to a shopping mall, walked about for an hour or two and sort of didn't buy anything or no plans or anything.
Didn't worry about the golf or anything. Just thought, let's just turn off.
Yeah, not really. I played 5. The 5 over 3-6 sounded worse than it was. There was a couple pins I sort of bounced at and sort of missed a couple of yards on the wrong side, and they were just sort of impossible to get up and down. So it was more probably just changing the tactic or sort of being a bit less aggressive. It wasn't as if I was sort of hitting particularly bad shots. So it was, I wasn't that concerned about it at the time. But yeah, we didn't really do much. We maybe went into the city for a couple hours as well and just sort of chilled out. But yeah, there wasn't when there's sort of a monsoon of rain coming in, there isn't much to do anyway. So it was a pretty relaxed day.
I thought you were going to give us some golden nuggets, like, basically I just rolled the rock for 6 hours and just did nothing but 6 footers for 6 hours, and that was it.
No, unfortunately not. No, we basically lay on the sofa and watch Netflix all day.
That's how disjointed that is for a few days. Like, you don't, particularly when, there's a lot behind it. You've given up a lot of time, you've come away from work to commit to that, to then be in that situation where you're playing 4 holes and 6 holes and 12 holes and just trying to kind of stay fresh so that when you pick up the bats again, you're kind of good to go out and attack the course. That's mental. The final then obviously was played on the Friday afternoon, the Saturday morning. So you were sleeping on a lead, going out for dinner with Hugh as well, I'm guessing in the evening, because you're sort of hanging out together. What's that like? Because then you've kind of eyeballing each other over dinner. That must be quite a cool thing, actually, like quite a nice experience.
Yeah, as I said, it was odd. Obviously doesn't happen very often. The 18 staggered final, and then obviously probably next to never happens that was sort of the two guys were staying together as well. So yeah, no, it was never sort of awkward or sort of a problem at any point at all. So me and you sort of are pretty good friends, and sort of we've played a lot of golf this year anyway. So I think we were both sort of pretty relaxed because we were playing each other. So it just made it felt a bit more just like a match we had played it at home, sort of. And then, we were sort of, really tired anyway. So we played the semi-final, played the first 18 holes of the final. There was only 2 in it. So it would have been a bit, if someone was 7 up or 8 up after 18 holes, it would have been a pretty sort of tough atmosphere because you sort of feel as if it's over by then. But
you're both in it at that point, aren't you? That's just the nature of match play.
Yeah.
It's like 2 holes. It's like there's nothing in this really.
Yeah, well, I was telling myself there's 2 in it, but 2 over 18 isn't anything really. It's it's anyone's game. Yeah, exactly. So so it was one of those things. We sort of got home from the golf, and then we were probably in bed within sort of 3 hours anyway. So we sort of chilled out for an hour, had dinner. We were just sort of the same sort of atmosphere as it was all week, and we sort of went to bed pretty early. So nothing changed, to be honest with you, compared to the rest of the week, really.
And what was the final in terms of the atmosphere? Do you get many people coming out and watching it at Erin Hills? Because I've never been there. My limited understandings, I can imagine it's kind of tucked away and quite remote out from the city itself. So, many people come out and watch. Do you get a lot of crowds, or by then a lot of people got their flights back?
Yeah, so I think that's sort of the slight problem with the match play format is that to a certain extent you probably rely on some of the field and the players to create the crowd in the amateur events. So obviously everyone's gone home, all the competitors have gone home. The fact that it was meant to finish on the Thursday as well and then delayed to the Saturday. So I'm not too sure how many people were there. Actually, I didn't really pay a huge amount of attention, but it wasn't a massive crowd. Well, it was big enough to sort of create a bit of an atmosphere around the place, but there was plenty of volunteers. So they must have had 50 or 60 volunteers over the 2 courses.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of those were out, which were good. They sort of followed you around for the week. So you sort of got to know them a wee bit better as well. And all the officials and, a couple of guys we sort of met along the way over there as well were out.
And what's the take on the course? Obviously, you're playing it on repeat by that point. What's the take on Erin Hills?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's one of those ones where I think when you play at a golf and tournaments competitions, you don't really get to sort of appreciate some of the aspects of it, whether or not it's the views in certain holes or certain green complexes where you may never be down that area of the green. But when you get to play it that many times as you said, on repeat, you generally get to see different areas of the course and different conditions, different wind directions, that sort of stuff. So it's really, really one of the best courses I've played. The condition of it is, I think, probably better than I've ever played. Definitely anywhere in this side of the water anyway. The fairways are just immaculate. Greens were tough. They had a lot of rain as well, so taking into consideration they had sort of 2 or 3 days of pretty torrential rain, and it was probably by the 2 days after that you couldn't tell that it had rained.
Which makes it a little bit more scoreable, I guess. But to a certain extent, it softens the greens up. All of a sudden, obviously a heavy US field there, which maybe it's an overgeneralization here, but it's a different brand of golf in America, isn't it? I think there's more, it's more aerial attack on the pin versus kind of maybe what we're a little bit more used to, where, weather conditions on the ground needing to be a little bit more creative. I don't know if there's any truth in that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely I think maybe when you get to the mid-amateur category, it might not be as much of a factor. When you're, if you're playing definitely college golf and sort of the top guys in the amateur scene, the Americans are definitely all in the air, carry as hard as you can hit it. I think there was maybe an aspect maybe in the mid-am that it wasn't quite as reliant on distance because of the sort of the age category.
Yeah.
But the rain, it was tough because the rain made the fairway soft obviously as well. So then you're taking away sort of 30 yards of sort of run coming off the fairways. But I think, soft fairways and soft greens is definitely definitely easier or more scoreable than firm fairways and firm greens. Because if you had the greens firm, I think at times they were probably running 13 on the stint.
Wow.
So it was, and the slopes are serious and there's green and that sort of stuff. So if you had them firm as well, it definitely would have been considerably harder.
Was it hard to adjust to grain on the putts? Just on that, you mentioned grain like that. That is something we never have to deal with over here. Do you find that a hard adjustment when you've got something starting to read grain into a putt?
So I've only really played grain probably the last couple of years. I wouldn't have been familiar with it at all. It's sort of one of those ones you can't think about it too much. You just got to sort of look at it. I think the best way is that you pick a line and sort of, if it's a right edge putt and you see the rain going right, you just go, right, I'll just give it an extra half inch. Yeah. Or you hit it a wee bit harder, or you got to account for it. I think when you think about it too much, that's when you sort of have issues with it. You've got to just
Tickles
sort of look
your
at
brain.
it.
It starts becoming too complicated.
And hit it. So I don't think there's any quick fix that I'm aware of. You've just got to play the greens, get used to it, and sort of get a feel for it and hit it. But I putted pretty well now, furnished around Erin Hills. So there's times you just get it, there's times you don't, I think. And if you don't get it, you just try not to worry about it.
So you started the final day 2 up. You sort of you build a big lead into the back 9, and you're coming down the stretch. We think you were 5 up, but coming down, or 5 up, 6 place,
5 or 6, yeah.
And does it enter your mind the things that you can win? Does that come into your mind when you play, or do you just have to box that off and just think, no, it's just keep going?
Yeah, you try not to. Same with any tournament. You try not to think about any stage what you're going to win, but like you can't not think about it, really. But I think the sort of way to look at it was that, like, it's such sort of an odd sort of prize to win that you probably don't realize that actually you are going to win that prize, even when you're in that situation. It didn't really sort of feel 100% real at the same time. So how far-fetched the plan or the prize was probably helped as well, because it didn't really seem real at times as well. So it was a bit easier to play that way. But it's funny with any match play, obviously, because I played so much with you, there wasn't any stage before that I sort of thought this, I have a chance here that I'm sort of going to win it as such. The only time was on the 12th green, and I think you said the same thing as well. I birdied 12 to go 5 up, and then that's probably the first time that I sort of thought, it's one hole here now. If I make one birdie, or Hugh makes one bogey, that's it over. So it did come into my head there that sort of I'm pretty much on the edge now.
Does that make you more nervous? Nerves are something we haven't really discussed. Were you nervous at all during the tournament, and did it get worse coming down the stretch?
Yeah, like any tournament, there's nerves in any tournament that you play at any sort of stage. They generally obviously get a bit more noticeable towards the end, but I think it was never nerves to the extent that it caused a problem with any sort of golf shots, which it can. So, but again, I just put that down to sort of the amount of times you put yourself in the position.
I think that's ridiculous, because I get nervous teeing off on the monthly medal. The fact you say you don't get nervous is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's not nervous. It's not I don't get nervous. It's more the fact that this week or last week, whatever it was, that it didn't affect my game negatively.
Yeah,
but you still get nervous. It's more of a fact of that you're dealing with the nerves, that you can still sort of play your normal game through it. But like, don't get me wrong, there's been tournaments this year that I've had nerves and it's affected my game, and I've hit a couple of bad shots and it's probably cost me a win or two. So yeah, it's not that I don't get them. It just happened to be last week that it didn't sort of negatively.
It's how you channel it, isn't it? I suppose to an extent, you know that this isn't a monthly medal, or it's not just like a social 9-hole game. So it's almost like how you channel that. That kind of, maybe there's like expectation and there's more thought and there's more excitement around the shots, but it's like, well, actually, I almost want to try and channel this into a positive outcome rather than it becoming a fear of failure. And I think there's so much. You see the most elite players, when they sort of they're under the gun, they almost feel like, but that's exactly how I want to feel, because when I feel like that, that's that's why I've put myself in these positions, because if it didn't feel like that, it wouldn't matter. And that's kind of how they see it. So, I mean, I suppose it's, does it almost allows you to bring out the best in your game to a certain extent when there's a lot on the line?
Yeah, as I said, the thing with sort of nerves, I think it's you don't get nervous. It depends, obviously, if it's a monthly medal, it's the first day, yeah. But everyone's have a different sort of reason to be nervous. So, but if you're nervous, generally there's a reason why. It's not, you're not sort of 30th in the tournament on the ninth hole. That's not when you'll get the nerves. It's if you're in the position that you're doing something right. So yeah, you sort of hear pros talking about it all the time. That sort of, if you're nervous, it's a sign that you're doing something right. So you just got to keep on doing what you're doing. I think the sort of the idea is that if you've got the nerves, you've got to go into sort of autopilot, and then that's when, if some people practice more than others, but those sort of like hours of practice that you've done, you've just got to sort of forget about everything and sort of just go right, set it up, hit it, and where, as you say, wherever it goes, because 99 times out of 100, when you hit a bad shot, it's when you're trying to sort of steer it down there, or you're trying something when you just come back, hit it as hard as you want. Generally speaking, it's probably a good shot. So, and if it goes offline and it goes in the water, then it goes in the water. It takes, I think, time just to sort of try to feel comfortable with that mindset.
Well, there's one thing I think that you're definitely going to get nervous at is obviously the prize, the US Open, and hopefully the Masters, that if that invitation comes through, which I'm sure it will. Have you given that much thought yet?
Probably not a huge amount. A couple of we've sort of a bit of thought about it just in the last sort of week about organisation and sort of what to think, but what to do. But yeah, I don't know LA Country Club overly well. I don't think I know any of the golf holes or anything like that, so it's hard to picture your sort of self there as such. But yeah, obviously Augusta, everyone knows Augusta, and sort of over the years watched it countless times. So yeah, there's probably points where you've imagined yourself walking down certain areas and things like that. And yeah, I don't know, the aspect of nerves coming into it is going to hit you no matter what you do.
Have you given someone the call up?
For sure.
Who's on the bag? Have you given someone the call up yet?
I don't know what we're going to do yet. Yeah, I've got a sort of couple of guys who would do, but then there's another sort of conversation, another idea that it's obviously Augusta's one of the sort of toughest courses in the world, and you can make it a fool of yourself pretty quickly, I think, around the greens and different things like that. So even the other aspect of having like a local caddy or like a professional caddy there, ideally you'd want to sort of walk down the fairway with like your dad or one of your best friends and things like that, because it'd be a pretty cool moment. Yeah. But if you're 16 over par walking up the last, it's not going to feel overly great either. So you've got to take that aspect into sort of consideration. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, but the likes of a local caddy who caddies there, every day, knows where to hit it, where not to hit it, is pretty invaluable sort of, information that you just can't really get from anyone else. So yeah, I don't know. I need to think about it, but there's definitely
the key thing is, so you're going to be able to get the time off work. I mean, is April a busy month? I mean, that's the key thing. You've got to get the holiday request in now, Matt, right?
Yeah. So I work as a locum optician. So I'm self-employed. So I'll just, it's no problem.
So unemployed for a month.
Yeah.
But I kind of mention it a little bit in jest, but playing in the US Mid-Am and winning that event, you're coming up. Obviously, the Mid-Am is meant to be more that sort of senior amateur, sort of over 25s, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
People who are maybe not turning professional or in that kind of post-collegiate state. But I think you're still coming up against a lot of full-time amateur players, right? Are you in the minority of people that are working but also playing elite amateur golf, or did you kind of sense that most of the people there had businesses or jobs and stuff that they were keeping down as well?
At the Mid-Am?
Yeah.
No, I think Mid-Am was definitely a very different sort of golf tournament. It felt a bit different because of the sort of the age aspect and where people what people were doing. So I think there was probably, I don't know how many, there was probably maybe 10 of us, or that I came across anyway, me and Hugh were obviously pretty much full-time golfers in the season. So we were definitely in the minority. Like most people were, qualified for it. We're working full-time, we're doing something like that. Yeah. So you had a small group of us that were probably still in that age group. and we're still playing sort of full-time competitive golf. So yeah, that was obviously a bit different to most of the tournaments you play all year, where it's 99% of the guys are full-time playing the sort of the top amateur tournaments.
And of course, I mean, it could be another huge one that we've not talked about. I mean, obviously, it's hard not to talk about Augusta, and it's really hard to talk about US Open and LACC. But the Walker Cup next year, obviously pending selection and all that sort of stuff. But I'm guessing you and Hugh are really prime picks. There's a lot of great talent in the GB&I amateur scene, players like Barclay Brown as well. Feels like there could be actually a really strong team playing at St Andrews next year. Is that in your thought process as well?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much, everyone has the sort of the start of the year, what they want to do, and anyone that's sort of within touching distance of that sort of Walker Cup team is obviously, that's going to be the number one goal, especially being at St Andrews as well. So yeah, no, that's definitely the goal. The way to look at it is that you've got to just take every tournament sort of individually and play those as good as you can to make that team. So I made the sort of the 9-man team this year for the St Andrews Trophy, which was good. Again, when there was 2, Mark Parr and Rob Moore, and both made the team as well. Mm-hmm. And Hugh was sort of probably, I know he was unfortunate not to make that team, but his form just came in just after the selection date. So I would say if you look at the sort of 10-man team now, Hugh's right up there at the moment, obviously. So yeah, that's sort of the big goal for next year. But as I said, it's trying to sort of play all the tournaments and making yourself, available to be able to sort of get picks.
Or does Wagger come into it at all? Is it like I should know this, but is it solely captain's picks, or do they lean a little bit on Wagger?
I don't know. I think there's actually talks about that, about whether or not there will be, or they're changing or things like that. As far as I'm aware, I think the top 2 automatically get in on Wagger. Could be wrong, but I think it's top 2, and then it's selections after that. So could be top 3. I don't really know, to be honest. But it's mainly selections I think you're relying on. And then I think if you win, the winner of the amateur gets in automatically. So there's a couple automatic ways in, but it's mainly selection based. Yeah.
And how does your kind of closing the season, we're in that sort of end of the twilight of the golfing year now, how does that now change the next 6 months preparation, what it looks like? Do you are there going to be a few exemptions to playing some pro events just to kind of cut your teeth in that environment a bit more, or is it going to be about really putting in the hours and the range, or what? How do you approach that?
Yeah, as I said, obviously, barring the obvious ones where there's those couple of weeks that will be playing, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of difference in change. So I'm back sort of working for the next sort of 3 months anyway. So then we have a South Africa trip with Golf Ireland.
Okay.
At the end of January, start of February time, for sort of 2-3 week period, where there's sort of a couple of good amateur events out there that you'll go to. I'll generally go out and do a bit of sort of warm weather sort of practice for that anyway. So you'll have that, and then you have those few tournaments to sort of warm up and get back into sort of get the game a bit sharper. And then I think in March you've maybe got Spanish amateur then, and then there's normally a few weeks off. So it's there's a lot of sort of organising to do. I haven't really had a chance to look at it just yet, but. And then I was talking to a friend who was, looking about the options of whether or not you get a couple invites for maybe a PGA event the week before or a couple of weeks before the events, or maybe a European Tour start. I don't really know. So it's relying on what's available, or what can be sort of what I can get as well. So I'll find that out, really.
If the opportunities arose, is that something you jump at? Do you relish the opportunity to tee it up with those guys?
Yeah, I think it's sort of one of those ones where it's a tough one with Walker Cup year as well, because you can't miss too many of the amateur events.
Yeah.
Instead of a pro event. So just say Brabazon Trophy was on 1 week, and then you got an invite to go play a PGA Tour event.
Yeah,
it's quite tough. It's quite tough to sort of turn down either. But
yeah,
if you look at it from a reality point of view, is that if you go to a PGA Tour event, if you play really well, you might make the cut, and you might come top 50. But the chances are, if you're looking at the averages, you're probably going to miss a cut in the PGA Tour event at that sort of stage. And then if you miss the cut, and then you've missed Brabazon, and then you're sort of one back from the selection as well. So it'll depend on what overlaps and sort of how the season pans out next year. But yeah, like if there's a couple of opportunities to play PGA Tour events or European Tour events, then yeah, you're sort of buzzing to get a go at them.
And do you find like that Walker Cup selection, and specifically this year coming up with it being at St Andrews and stuff, is that kind of the guiding factor to how you lay out your golfing calendar?
Yeah, I think it's similar to pretty much every year, other than the fact that there isn't a Walker Cup all at the end of the year every 2 years. You'll still play the same events, still, all the ones that we'll sort of play normally every year. We'll still play the same stuff. It's just with the fact that that's there at the end of the year. So yeah, it'll be, I think, as I said, bar the obvious 2 weeks and maybe an invite here and there. We'll see how that goes. It will be pretty much the same as last year or the year just past there.
Just on, we sort of talked a little bit about, obviously, you and Hugh and Irish golf and first USGA, amateur champion, mid-amateur champion, but the amateur game in Ireland seems to be, certainly the elite amateur golf is much more visible in Ireland than what we would see over here in England or whatever. I don't know why that is, but and maybe I'm slightly tainted by people that we know that play golf in Ireland that just seem to buzz off, Walker Cup and amateur golf. But I get the sense that the whole amateur scene in Ireland is just really, really cool. Is that just a bad take by me, or is it actually a case of there's a really, really competitive amateur scene now in Ireland that's kind of kicking off? Because there's Twitter accounts that publish these things blow by blow. I'm pretty sure I was following. It was at the south of Ireland. I think Hugh went on and won that, didn't he? And that was Richard Knightley as well. I don't know. Maybe you played with Richard in the semis or something like that. But I just got the sense there's a lot more visibility around amateur golf, particularly at an elite level over there.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a tough one to judge when you're sort of I only really know Irish amateur golf well enough. Yeah. Compared to sort of the England, Scotland ways. But yeah, I think the tradition in Ireland with amateur golf was massive. I think it's the same as anywhere, that it probably is getting less sort of an importance over the past sort of 10, 15 years, just with professional golf really being sort of so big. So, but there's definitely a massive sort of buzz around the tournaments. They're sort of, you got the 4 provincial tournaments, the North, South, East and West, which are sort of big points in the calendar every year for all the golfers. So, everyone sort of really wants one of those tournaments on their CV. They say Hugh won 2 of them this year, one back to back in North and South. So it's things like that are sort of pretty cool when you're playing the events. I think if you looked at it 20 years ago, I've seen you see photos in the 90s or the early 2000s of like the likes of Darren Clark and Paul McGinley, McIlroy, Rory playing the events, and there's maybe hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people walking around some of the matches. Yeah. That has sort of, I think, died down a bit. Whether that's because of the sort of the increase in professional golf, possibly, but people maybe couldn't have access sort of high level golf 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You had to go out and watch the local amateurs play. So there's maybe an aspect that it's just the amount of access to golf these days has reduced that, but the sort of the buzz within the players to win the tournaments is exactly the same as it always has been, I would have thought.
Mm-hmm. And are there going to be any of the great Irish professionals that you're going to be able to draw on for a little bit of experience? I suspect there might be some interesting practice rounds ahead of you before some of these majors. There seems to be kind of some little traditions that go on around certain players kind of getting the call up for a practice round. Do you think, I don't know, you pally with people like Shane or Rory or anyone's going to be able to kind of give you a few hints and tips when it comes to the majors next year, do you think?
Yeah, as I said, obviously that's tradition. I haven't looked into anything just yet. As I said, it's a bit early to sort of be organising things just yet. But if you look into the tradition of what's normally happened, like I know James pretty well. James Sugary won the amateur in 2019, so obviously played those events. Yeah, I think they generally sort of look after sort of any sort of Irish amateur who's coming into play. It's obviously a pretty daunting experience. So yeah, I think I might be wrong, but I think there's 3 Irish playing the Masters this year. I think it's Rory, Parr and McIlroy. There might be someone I'm missing, or I'm not sure.
Seamus Power, maybe.
Yeah, sorry, Seamus Power, Rory and McIlroy. So I think it's them 3. those three guys who are playing. So obviously, if there's a wee free spot in there, I'd happily join. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know our national coach Neil Manchip is Shane Lowry's coach as well.
Okay.
So generally speaking, he's very good with helping us out as well. So there'll be playing a practice round with any of the guys is going to be pretty good. So it's I'm sure I'll get a couple of good practice rounds out of it anyway.
Yeah, well, you got an amazing 6, 8, 9 months ahead of you, and honestly, I know you're going to be really busy now with all the media commitments you're going to have over the next few weeks talking about the mid-am and stuff, and we really appreciate you coming on to take some of the time to speak with us. But I suppose it's just for me and Sam and Bruce to wish you all the best in your upcoming endeavours and in the US Open and the Masters, and we're so chuffed. It must have been a really exciting time for you to win that mid-am, and now you've got the spoils of war to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks very much. But I think it's winning the tournament was sort of my goal. As I came close a few times this year, a couple seconds, a third, and things like that. So just to actually win the tournament was sort of probably the biggest relief, as opposed to anything else. And then sort of bit by bit, sort of the prize at the end definitely sort of comes a bit more like reality. But again, it still sort of feels so far away and not overly sort of real just yet. So we'll see how it goes. But as I said, there's the 6 months from sort of January. Well, January, hopefully, if I can play well, sort of, the idea to be at St Andrews in September. And then, you've got that sort of January to sort of September time is going to be pretty cool. A few sort of
one step at a time seems like the best approach. Well, best of luck with Matt, and a big thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right, guys, see you later.
Watch this.